a lot of the talk that we've had today so far has been a bit focused, I think, on an academic, the academic career struggle and path. And I would say that, I'm going to show you that the vast majority of you will not be in academia a few years from now. So I'm going to go kind of quick through these slides. I hope to have time for questions at the end. So before I start, I just want to do a native lands acknowledgement. We don't, I don't like to be performative about this, so I'd like to make a suggestion to increase the diversity of your news streams. So Duncan McHugh is a Canadian activist and radio personality for Native and Indigenous lands rights. And one of the cool things is if you go to his website or find people on social media that you want to follow, Twitter, for example, suggests other people that you might want to follow. So it's really important to hear about Indigenous peoples' struggles, their goals, and native land, issues from the people themselves. And so that's generally true about inclusion work. And so I would say I should also acknowledge that here in Newton, Massachusetts, I am on Pawtucket and Massachusetts land, where I do my work from at home. So what I found over my many years of working with scientists as a mentor, advisor, peer, everybody thinks this is how we make decisions. We have a hypothesis, we test it, we go back and tweak the hypothesis. And, but when it comes to career decisions, this just goes right out the window. And scientists think that they're doing that, but actually what they're doing is just like, oh, this sounds like a good idea, but they don't get data and they don't really use any of their scientific skills. So my goals today are to help you think about how you might use your scientific skills to make decisions about your career. This is also a call to action. I really wish that, career and future planning was and a part of your curriculum, like a required part, but it's really not in most places. So you're going to have to seek data yourself and go out for it. And that's going to be your personal responsibility. I am working at a systemic level to make these good mentorship and career support more a part of the life science career training, but we're not quite there yet. So a lot of times what you're hearing is this language that you've left academia. You're wasting your PhD if you leave academia, and then leaving science can be a good career decision. The fact, and in the other direction, illogical myths keeping talented PhDs stuck in academia. The fact is, you're not leaving science. You're never going to leave science because you're a scientist. It's something you are, not something you do. And you take that training with you wherever you go. And it's a really normal thing to get training and then move into a career. And it doesn't matter where that career is, whether it's in academia or not. So if you're feeling internal guilt or pressure about, something that you're selling out, this is so much not the truth. And I would like you to contact me if you are having trouble embracing this contact. So it's really important that you embrace this, because here's some data I'll share from the US and then I'll share some from the UK. Those orange lines are the total faculty positions that are available in our fields. And the blue line is the number of PhDs being awarded up through 2011. I guarantee you this picture is not getting any better. There just aren't enough tenure track jobs. And by the way, nor do there need to be, because I guarantee you that not every one of you belongs as an academic professor. I certainly did not. I moved right from my graduate work to a pharma position, which I really loved and thrived at. That was the right position for me. So my goal is to help you find the right position for you and have the right people stay in academia. I love the apprenticeship training model, so I'm not trying to discourage people. I'm trying to encourage the right choices. This is some data from the UK, from some Wellcome research. That little teeny tiny arrow at the bottom, those are the tenure faculty professor positions, 0.49% the year of this data, 2010. So, these are hard data. You have to think about early, you have to start thinking about your career. And as I mentioned, this may not be a formal part of your curriculum. There's a lot of conflict of interest with your lab and your PI. They want you to stay around for a really long time because the better you get, the more useful you are in the lab. So even the very best mentors are somewhat in a conflict of interest situation, the way our systems are set up. So you really need to be watching out for yourself and taking ownership of your own development. So how did I get here? I'm going to talk about my career through 4 different lenses. I actually moved from academia to pharma to biotech to nonprofit, and now I'm doing consulting. And I did a short stint in academic administration before I started my current gig doing diversity work full time. So I'm going to go through 4 different versions of this career path. The first one is, how did I meet people? I know that everybody hates the word networking, so I don't use it. You need to build relationships. That is how people get jobs. I love this data. 52% of scientists, about 1,200 scientists, said that networking was how they got their job. But like all these other categories are networking as well, right? And LinkedIn is the networking website. So something like 86% of people get jobs because of the relationships that they have. So why is that true? So this is some other data that I found interesting. 7% of applications to jobs come from referrals. That means a networking relationship. But 40% of hires come from referrals. And this is because we really love to know that the person that we're hiring is not going to do some off the chart thing, like you hire someone and 2 weeks later they pull a knife on someone at the lab who borrowed their pipette. That actually happened to me. I had to fire them. But if I had known people who knew that person for a long time, I would have some feeling that they were a decent person to work with, a pleasant person to work with. And then you still get you the job, but referrals and relationships often get you the interview. I know that you hate networking. Please watch my YouTube videos. You can Google me. You can find those videos online. They're in a couple places. I also have a number of blogs. You really want networking to feel normal. I don't suggest that you do weird things to like fake card exchanges or go to events if you're introverted. That's not a good idea. But what you can do is get involved on a committee. Be open to relationships. And I don't have time today to go into the full hour of tips that I have, but if you want some actionable work, again, you can reach out to me or look through some of my content online. So how did I get here as far as relationships go? My first job was a referral. My academic PI knew people in industry, in the pharma industry, and he helped me get my first job through a direct friend of his. He introduced me. My second one, I was hired by someone who I had worked with and knew, who was doing a startup in RNAi with Craig Mello, and that was really fun. When I went to Addgene, it was a referral and direct contact, so both of those things were in play. And finally, I just joined a consulting firm with people that I've been working with for 10 years on diversity issues in general, especially for women in entrepreneurship. Although we do all kinds of equity and inclusion work with STEM organizations. So that's how I got all my jobs, all through people, every one of them. So, okay, that's the first lens, is knowing people. The second lens is professional development. And you do need to learn the science, you need to learn it well, and you need to be good at it. It's going to be a crucial skill. But there are all kinds of other things you need to learn. They're not soft skills. There's no such thing as a soft skill. They are plus skills, and they are vitally important for academic or non-academic jobs. And you can do a lot of that training while you are in school. I have a lot of also content on this online. I'm not going to go into detail in this talk, but these are the 5 kind of top areas you want to work in: communication skills, technical knowledge, teamwork, managing people, and leadership potentially, if that's of interest to you. Why managing people? If you do stay in academia, your path is actually to be a lab head. That's what you want to probably do, or lead a group. Perhaps you lead a group of educators in science, in academia. If you leave academia, you certainly are going to work with other people, and you're often going to manage people. Okay. And you know what? When you get out of grad school, and if you do a postdoc, you are kind of old. So they're going to think that you know how to manage people. And if you have no practice and experience with that, you are at a distinct disadvantage, for not just for getting jobs. You can probably get them, but can you do well at them? So these are all skills that you can learn while you're training. Feel free to reach out to me for more information on this, or I do have a number of, I point to one blog here. Maybe Hello Bio wants to cross-post some of this content. There's a lot of things you can do. Okay, so that was lens 2. Lens 2 was always doing professional development, raising your hand all the time. So, and actually I should say, in my pharma career, anytime there was an opportunity to take any type of training that might be applicable, because in a large company, you have all kinds of opportunities for this. I raised my hand and did it. Did a collaboration with Japan? Yes. Became a beta tester on our database? Yes. Whatever anybody asked me to do that was new, I focused on that. To me, the definition of being a scientist is always learning. So that's actually what we enjoy anyway. Okay, so lens 3. Way back when I was starting out at BASF, which became Abbott, in Worcester here in Massachusetts, I woke up one day. I was not very senior in the company. I was a senior scientist at that point. I had been there a few years. And I look around for a week and I see not a single other woman in any meeting that I'm in the whole week. And in grad school, it was 50-50 women and men, speaking from a binary perspective. So about half, women for men and a smaller percentage of people who were non-binary. It's actually 20 years later, that percentage is slightly larger as more people are able to bring their full selves to work with more awareness of those issues. But the issue was, there were a lot of men and mostly white men, I'm going to say. And I own my privilege as a white adult, but as a woman in science, I did not have that much privilege. And there was a lot going on that was preventing me from advancing and being successful. I can tell you some of those stories perhaps at the end if you have time. So academia doesn't leak as far as gender goes, it gushes. Women are excellent students. They make it through grad school 50-50, sometimes even more women than men in these programs, but they do not advance. I do not have time to talk to you all about the leaky pipeline, the gushing pipeline of science. Please reach out to me if you would like more resources on this. This should not be news to you. If you are a woman, you're certainly experiencing it. And if you are an ally and not a woman of any other gender, then you're aware of it. By the way, intersectionality issues, that means you're a woman and you're Black, or you're a woman and you are LGBTQ, or you're a woman and you identify as Latina. Whatever those intersectionalities are, your gushing is even worse. More and more of those people with intersectional identities are leaking. And it's not just about gender. These are, you can see these data for the dark blue line is the number of PhDs given to under-recognized and marginalized scientists. And then these much, much less effective lines are those that are actually getting faculty positions, right? So it's really the inequities in science are having an incredible impact on the lack of diversity, which of course affects the world because science really needs to be done by everyone. So this is very problematic. I, of course, was very disturbed by this. So it's not just caused by harassment and bullying, although that is happening. I don't need to tell you about what's in the news, all the bullies. And so the Me Too movement really brought this to the fore, and we're finally starting to see some of these people accountable for their actions. This is a slide from Dragonfly Mental Health, who I mentioned in the chat, I admire incredibly. Sexual harassment in academia, get this statistic, second highest rate of sexual harassment of any professional industry. There's a lot of reasons for that. If we have time at the end, you can ask me if you're interested in that. Has to do primarily with the fact that lab heads have no accountability. They don't really have a boss, and their organizations are not holding them accountable. So, this is going to cause issues of why are women leaving academia? Why are LGBTQ and non-binary people leaving academia? Well, this may be why, and it's certainly one of the factors. It's not the only factor, although sexual harassment is not rare, as we know, as I just told you. This is the 2020 Welcome Report that talks about international UK and US. And basically, scientists just are not comfortable because they know a lot of people who have witnessed or experienced bullying and harassment, but they have a great fear of negative personal consequences for reporting it and doing anything about it. So we are not doing a great job solving this problem. And but that is a big problem that affects a lot of people. But what affects and that's the tip of the iceberg, those really bad people. And one by one, we are starting to see them lose their positions, lose their funding. NSF and NIH are starting to take a harder stance on this, and also preventing the harasser. That means like a harasser is identified at one organization, but then they go to another organization and just do just as much damage. So what really is going on, though, is not just that tip of the iceberg, though, but it's the iceberg that below the water is bigger. And these are all the things, and not just as far as gender, but the bias and microaggressions and exclusion and mistreatment of marginalized and marginalized groups of people. That this bias is what leads to the wholesale inability for us to effectively diversify our science workforce. So I don't have time today to do a whole workshop on implicit bias. You can Google that. You can Google me talking about implicit bias in some conferences. There's a lot you can learn. Self-educating is one of the best ways to start being an ally. And so I urge you to get involved. The generation of scientists that are coming up now cannot ignore the fact that we have major issues of equity in science. We have major issues of equity in the world, but as I mentioned, our academic training system particularly bad for these types of issues. So, how did I get here? Lens number three. That's volunteerism, diversity. I got angry about something, I got active, and that really created a whole network for me. All the other people I was meeting that were angry about the lack of equity, diversity, and inclusion in science, those are the people that became my network, but through very deep relationships because we work together on something that's meaningful to us. And for me, decades later, it turned into a full time job, which is the work that I'm doing now. So, lens number four, people talk about work life balance about scientists that have children or don't have children. I had a kid in graduate school. I had another one my second year working in pharma. Now, my parents need more help. There's a lot of things going on. There's always going to be life issues. You could have health issues. Your partner could have health issues. You could be looking for a partner and not have time to do that, and you want one. You could want to do horseback riding as your avocation. You could be wanting to volunteer like I did to change the world's look at diversity and inclusion. Whatever the work life issues are, you are going to have them. They're not just about parents, they are a part of everyone's life. So what's really crucial is that you pay attention to your life. We had some great talks today that touched on this issue of protecting yourself. I really, the number of women in particular, and men also, and all genders that I speak to that think that they're going to wait till after their postdoc to have a baby is ludicrous. This isn't an issue of equity. This is a biology issue. It is harder to have children and healthy children as you get older. So I'm not saying everyone should have children, but if you want to, and then you are in a healthy relationship and you want to do that within a relationship, you should not wait until you are 38 to start doing that. That is my advice. That is my candid advice about that. And I will give it to anyone who wants to ask me about it. It is a huge problem that we defer our lives. And certainly we shouldn't be deferring our mental health, our wellness, our mindfulness. Oya gave a great talk about that and really, really embrace that. You need to be choosing labs that make space for life. So I have a lot of content online about work-life negotiation. And I will tell you just a couple facts. One is I'm Orthodox Jewish and I do not work on the Sabbath. So in all of my entire many decades long science career, I don't use my computer, my phone, or do anything except read. I do a lot of science reading. I love to read and I love science. So we can read on the Sabbath, but from sundown Friday till sundown Saturday, that day is a day of mindfulness, time with my family. We eat together. We probably eat too much. We play board games. We play Settlers of Catan. I've been playing Scrabble with my husband almost every week for some 33 years. Whatever those things are, we spend quality time together with no phones, no social media, no computers. So if you want to create work-life negotiation, I strongly suggest that you start by carving out some time with your loved ones, whoever they are, that's not distracted by your phone telling you that you should be working. This is super important. So what I hear from people is that they choose labs with advisors that have no understanding of work-life negotiation. In the old days, and still prominent as a common structure, the PI is a man, a self-identified man who has a partner, usually a woman, at home who's taking care of his household. And that allows him to work all the crazy hours that he wants. And if you have a PI like that who is not embracing an understanding of a more reasonable work-life negotiation, especially for families where there isn't someone at home taking care of the household and doing all the other stuff that frees up a person. Most of us can't afford to even live like that anymore, or nor would we want to. I don't have a job. I have a career. I have a passion for science. So really, really have to think about making good choices. And that means doing a lot of research before you choose an advisor. It should not be because you like their science. Should be because you like their mentorship and their style of managing the lab. Again, a lot more content about this online. 15 minutes is really hard to fit in all the high points here that I want. So finally, the last thing is how I got here is life. All these things are going on in my life. I have a lot of hobbies. I'm a voracious reader. I read about 100 books a year. I have a granddaughter now, and if you don't think I want time off to spend time with her, I need balance for that for sure, because that is a great joy in one's life. And so, always seeking mental health through balance and through really seeking out and still having a passion and a successful scientific career. So please don't stay in a position. Really think about moving if you have an abusive or unsupportive PI that allows you to have mental health, work-life balance that you need. So how should you feel? Well, work is hard. I'm not going to lie. Some parts of it are unpleasant, but you should be happy enough that it doesn't make you miserable, which can ruin your home life as well. Things sometimes fall into place. You should occasionally feel confident because you have supportive people around you and you feel confident in your abilities. I'm not saying we don't sometimes question ourselves. I thought Matt's talk was excellent. But hopefully you're not being caused to feel imposter syndrome by people around you that are bullying you or gaslighting you or making you feel bad. Sometimes you just really like what you're doing. And so sometimes science to me just doesn't feel like work. And that's where you want to be. And if you're not there, then you really need to think about what you're doing. And my last words are treat this like a research assignment. You really want to educate yourself and get data on career decisions. Don't take no for an answer. Just doing the bench work is not enough during your training. Every other field, every other career has career readiness as part of their part of the training, part of the work. You're not getting paid enough. You're getting paid like barely a living wage for the level of education that you have. You have to use that time to also prepare for your career. Make sure that not to bring an whiny academic attitude outside of academia. We have a certain angst in academia. People outside of academia want to work with people who are happy and energized and pleasant. So I've been in so many interviews where I interview people and they're just depressed and miserable. First of all, please don't be depressed and miserable. Science is hard. It shouldn't torture you. And finally, activate your network and nurture it. And you have to do that now. You can't wait until you need a job. You have to start developing your network all along the way because it's the people that know you well that will help you when the time comes. So I'm very happy to take questions. One thing, if you are starting to do a career search, and you could start that as early as year 3, educating yourself about what careers, actually, you could start that while you're an undergraduate. Check out the seismic.com job board. It's very specifically geared for life scientists in particular, and you may find it useful if that applies to you. And also, I just put out a video series at iBiology on peer mentoring, which if you don't have a supportive lab PI, or as was suggested, you want more mentors in your life, peers make fantastic mentors, and they're going to step up and they're going to form a great supportive community for you. So check out that video series. Also, here's my LinkedIn profile. If you have questions, you can reach out directly for me. You can scan this little QR code, which is a new thing since business cards are gone. I think I'm allowed to stay on and take a few questions. Thank you very much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joanne. There was so much in that. I feel like every one of your slides could have just been a whole conference. So that was brilliant. Thank you. We have we have 4 questions from the audience. Okay. So it would be great to get through all of them. And if there's no time, feel free to direct it to more information. But I'm just going to ask one question quickly, which is one of our attendees is asking if you will share your Pokemon Go friend code.
I won't do it here online, but reach out to me on Twitter, or I'm on Discord also, if you can find me on Discord. So I don't want to do it here online because I don't think I can get to it fast enough. But sure, I love to friend scientists on Pokemon. I'm about to level up too, so I get to change my slide.
Amazing. So Matthew Wilkinson has asked, how do we change leaving academia being perceived by some people as a failure?
Oh, we just all have to start talking about how it's not leaving academia. It's finishing your training. That is what people do. My son went to school to be a mechanical engineer. He finished his training. He got a job. That's what people do. Literally, not all of you should be going to academia. It's not the right job for everyone. And it's also just, there aren't a job. And I want you all to be scientists 5-10 years from now. I don't want you to leave science because of, the applicability. If you are in a work training location where that is the attitude, I would toot sweet do everything you can to get yourself to a lab that supports multiple career paths and celebrates that. And there are many great mentors who perform that way. So I can't emphasize this enough. And it really, seriously, contact me if you need a pep talk. I do this all the time. You are not letting anybody down. You don't owe anything to anyone. You may not be paying for your PhD, but you are seriously getting underpaid. And as a postdoc, you're dramatically underpaid for the level of skill and talent that you have. So your training system owes you the right training to get a job so that you can support your life. I didn't have the kind of money where I'm like doing this for fun. I am also supporting my life with my career. And so you don't owe anything to anyone.
I love that. I think someone asked earlier during Matthew Cayley's talk about affirmations. I feel like you just gave us like 5 affirmations.
Please, yes, please affirm. I am a scientist. I can do anything. And it is not just be a professor. And being a professor is great, by the way. We need diverse, excellent scientists to train the next generation, and they need to be diverse. So if you have the chops for that and it is your skill set, wasn't my skill set, please pursue that career, and I can help you figure out how to do that effectively as well.
Amazing. And Jasmine Benjamin, one of our panelists, has said, I heard from some people that you should always do a postdoc after a PhD because you can always start in academia, go to industry and come back, but you can't start in industry and go back to academia without a traditional postdoc. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Plenty of people know by the time they're 28 years old whether they're cut out for academia or non-academia. Also, there is no such thing as just industry. There's like 100 million different careers you can have outside of academic science training. Industry implies like pharma, biotech, but there's government and nonprofit and activism and science communication. And there's just like, I couldn't even begin to list them all. There's dozens of different careers you can have. So the idea is to do the exploration during your training so that you're able to have some idea. I did not do a postdoc because first of all, I had a baby and I didn't have enough money to do a postdoc. I was very clear that that was my path. My advisor agreed with me. I said, I think I'll thrive in pharma. And he said, yeah, I think you will too. That's the kind of advisor you want that's going to be honest with you, right? And also, it has been shown that this isn't right. We need to pay postdocs better, but you lose like over your career like $1 million if you postdoc, and like a lot of money, because the salaries, as you know, are dramatically different. I'm happy to talk about salaries, be very open about what starting salaries are outside of right out of a PhD right now. Once you have your PhD, you are a scientist. And once you get into your next job, you're going to continue learning. I got a second PhD basically when I went to pharma because I moved from molecular biology to work on immunology. I basically had to become an immunologist. So I basically got a second PhD, except they paid me a lot of money. It seemed like a lot of money at the time, not as much money as you get now. But the comparator to my graduate salary was enough to pay for daycare. So there you go. But I really want to emphasize that that is absolutely not a thing that you have to do. And if you are going to do a postdoc and you're pretty sure you don't want to stay, it's okay to do that. And sometimes for visa issues, you have to. I understand that. Make it short and sweet. 2 to 3 years. That's my goal. My goal while I'm a postdoc is to get my next job, not to stay for a really, really long time. That's not going to benefit you, your life, your career, anybody.
Yep. Brilliant. And we've got 2 more questions. So the first one is, how do you build relationships or network with people outside of academia when you're a PhD student?
Yeah, so there's no way I have time to do that on this call. Please go watch my video. It's both on iBiology and you should go read the Hello Bio blog because I think there are lots of great tips on networking there. I don't want to defer you, but I also have video content on the Addgene YouTube site that talks about networking, and both of our blogs have many, many blogs on building relationships. You can just Google me and Not Networking 101, and they will turn up. And I'm happy to answer questions through social media about that content. Basically, you got to get out there and meet people, and there are lots of ways to do it.
Brilliant. And then our final question before I hand back over to Sam, who also has a question for you, and we'll then wrap up. And I get the sense this is going to be, how much time have we got to talk about this?
Okay.
But Rushika, apologize if that is not how you pronounce your name, Rushika, how do you find your calling? Don't you think that people who have resources have higher chances to progress? And what about people who are penalized by their circumstances?
Oh. So, I mean, the lack of equity in science and inequitable opportunity is an enormous problem. I honor the people that recognize it and try to function both as allies and that are navigating it themselves. I really don't have time to do a whole talk on the inequities that lead to the diversity and bias issues and harassment and microaggressions that lead to issues in science for everybody. But how do you find your calling? So my calling was to also work on those issues all along the way. And both on a systemic level, but individually helping people through all kinds of types of programming. But I don't think we have one calling. So I don't know if you noticed my career path, but I did pharma and I worked at the bench and I managed science. And then I moved into scientific management at a biotech. That was very different. And then I moved into the business development group and started doing more on alliance management and building business relationships around science. And then I became the CEO or the executive director of a company called Addgene, which I did for a decade, which involved a lot more. I didn't do bench science anymore, but I was immersed in the science that Addgene supports, along with business development, finance, human resources, all the other things that I had to learn. And then I've done different things since I left Addgene last year after that decade. So I think I don't see careers as going like this. I see careers kind of going like this. My feeling is I need to be learning and developing new skills because that's what makes me happy about work. You have to figure out what makes you happy about work. I will tell you that for me, working in the nonprofit space was tremendously rewarding. That isn't, doing drug development is tremendously rewarding. Helping people learn about science education is tremendously rewarding. Everyone is going to find reward in different ways and at different times in your career. So the only career that has like a very defined path is the academic career to a PI that does grant-driven research in a university. That's just one way. There are all kinds of academic positions around science that don't involve that specific path, but there are many, many paths that can bring people to job satisfaction. I hope that helps answer the question.
Yes, it absolutely does. And Sam has said that you've also answered her question. So that's brilliant. So I shall say thank you so much, Joanne, for that talk. And I will hand back over to Sam for closing comments now. Thank you so much, Joanne, and all of our speakers. Bye-bye.